The greatest tank battle ever fought and the moment history held its breath. Imagine standing on a field so vast you cannot see the horizon clearly. Now imagine that entire field erupting in fire, thunder, and massive waves of steel. Over 6,000 tanks charging forward, nearly 2 million soldiers screaming, firing, and dying. A single question hanging in the smoke-filled air: who will survive the next minutes? This is July 1943, in the middle of the Second World War. The place is Kursk, a name most people have never even heard of before. But what happened here did not just decide a single battle or campaign. It decided the fate of the entire Second World War and human history itself. Let me take you back to the beginning of this incredible and terrifying story. The calm before the storm. It is spring, 1943, and Adolf Hitler is furious beyond measure today. He stands in his war room, staring intensely at a detailed map of Europe. For 2 brutal years, his armies have been locked in a deadly struggle. Eastward. They have been fighting the Soviet Union in the most brutal war ever known. Millions of soldiers and civilians are already dead on both sides of the conflict. Entire cities have been reduced to ash, rubble, and mountains of broken bodies. And for the first time since the war began, Hitler's generals are whispering something. They are speaking a word they have never dared to whisper before in his presence. That word is defeat, and it hangs heavy in the air like poisonous gas. The German army has just been crushed at the Battle of Stalingrad months earlier. The myth of German invincibility is shattered completely, broken into 1,000 pieces now. German soldiers are exhausted, starving, and losing hope with each passing day of war. Supplies are running dangerously low across the entire Eastern Front at this point. But Adolf Hitler refuses to accept reality or listen to his experienced generals now. He points to a specific spot on the map with his trembling, angry finger. It is a bulge in the Soviet line near the city of Kursk. There, he says firmly, we will strike there with everything we have left available. One decisive blow will destroy their army and take back control of the war. His generals hesitate, exchanging worried glances across the dimly lit room before them. They know the Soviets are preparing something big, something dangerous, and potentially deadly here. They know this could very well be a carefully prepared trap for them. But Hitler does not care about their concerns or warnings at all anymore. He gives the operation a name that sounds powerful: Untold Citadel, Operation Citadel in English. Now think about this: on the other side of the front line, a man named Georgy Zhukov sits. He is also staring at a map, but unlike Hitler, he is smiling confidently. Georgy Zhukov is the Soviet Union's greatest general and a tactical genius of war. He is a man who has already turned the tide at Moscow and Stalingrad, and he knows something that Adolf Hitler does not know at all right now. He knows exactly when and where. The Germans are going to attack his forces, because Soviet spies have successfully infiltrated the highest levels of German command structure completely. The trap is set. For months, the Soviets have been preparing day and night for this coming battle. Not to attack first, but to absorb the German assault like a sponge absorbs water. Let it bleed itself dry, and then strike back with overwhelming superior force afterward. It is a gamble, a deadly and carefully calculated gamble. With millions of lives. Across hundreds of miles, Soviet soldiers dig trenches, foxholes, and defensive positions without rest. They dig anti-tank ditches, minefields, and obstacles across the entire front line daily. Layer after layer of defenses, some estimates say over 1 million mines were laid. Entire forests are turned into death traps with hidden guns and explosives everywhere possible. Villages become fortresses with every building turned into a defensive strongpoint now. The soldiers know what is coming toward them like a massive wave of steel. They have been told clearly, the Germans will throw everything at us without mercy. Tanks, planes, artillery, flamethrowers, everything they have will come at us soon. They will try to break us, destroy us, and push us back eastward. Do not let them pass, do not let them win, do not let them live. Imagine this: you are a 19-year-old Soviet tank driver in the Red Army now. You have never been in a real battle before this moment in your life. You sit inside your T-34 tank, hands trembling on the cold controls. The air inside smells like oil, sweat, fear, and the breath of your crew. Your commander's voice crackles over the radio in urgent, commanding tones. They are coming now. Hold your position. You hear it before you see it approaching across the open fields ahead of you. A low rumble, growing louder with each passing second, closer and closer to you. Then the horizon turns black with thousands of tanks. Advancing in formation toward you, the beast awakens. July 5th, 1943, at exactly 4:30 in the morning, darkness prevails. The German offensive begins, but here is the twist nobody expected at all today. The Soviets strike first with a massive artillery barrage before dawn breaks over them. Just hours before the planned German attack, Soviet artillery opens fire. Across the lines, thousands of guns light up the pre-dawn darkness, raining shells down everywhere possible. It is a message, a clear message. We know you are coming for us. And then, as planned by Hitler, the Germans attack anyway with full force forward. From the north and the south, two massive armored pincers push forward relentlessly now. They are aiming to encircle and destroy all Soviet forces in the Kursk Bulge. Leading the charge are machines that look like they crawled out of nightmares themselves. Tigers, Panthers, Ferdinand's names that will become legendary in the history of warfare forever. These are not ordinary tanks like anything the world has seen before. This moment. The Tiger one weighs 56 tons, with armor so thick most shells bounce. Its 88mm gun can destroy a T-34 from a mile. The Panther is faster, sleeker, a predator built for killing and destroying everything ahead, and the Ferdinand is a rolling bunker, nearly indestructible by conventional weapons available. Now, the German tank crews believe they are unstoppable, invincible, superior to their enemy completely. They are wrong, terribly and fatally wrong, and they will learn this soon enough. Hell on earth. The first day is absolute chaos, confusion, death, and destruction on a massive scale. German tanks roll forward confidently, but they do not advance into empty open fields. They advance into carefully prepared kill zones designed specifically for them to enter now. Hidden Soviet anti-tank guns open fire from concealed positions all around them suddenly. Tanks explode in massive fireballs. Crews burn alive, screaming inside their steel coffins now. Mines detonate under treads, ripping machines apart, and throwing turrets into the air high. But the Germans keep coming forward. Wave after wave of steel and determination pushes. Soviet defenders fight with everything they have, every weapon, every ounce of courage available. Soldiers throw themselves under tanks with explosives strapped to their chests without hesitation now. Anti-tank rifles crack loudly, artillery pounds the earth, the sky turns black with smoke. And still, the Germans push forward, advancing meter by meter through hell itself today. Villages change hands 3, 4, 5 times in a single day of brutal fighting. The ground is soaked with blood, oil, and the bodies of thousands of men. The air is thick with the smell of burning flesh, diesel, and cordite smoke. This is not war anymore, this is annihilation. This is the end of everything human. But then something changed. On July 12th, near a small town called Prokhorovka, something extraordinary happens that day. The two largest tank forces in history collide head-on in open fields before them. Over 800 tanks and assault guns meet in a space barely 10 miles wide. The cauldron of steel. Picture this moment in your mind as clearly as you possibly can right now. You are a German tank commander inside a Tiger tank this morning at dawn. You have just destroyed 3 Soviet tanks with precise shots from your powerful gun. You feel invincible, untouchable, superior, like a god of war riding across the battlefield. Then you look up through your periscope and see something that freezes your blood. The horizon is moving, it is not a mirage, it is real and terrifying. Hundreds of Soviet T-34 tanks are charging straight at you. Not in formation, not with tactics, just pure suicidal aggression and raw courage forward. They are closing the distance so fast you cannot aim properly at individual targets. Your long-range advantage is gone, eliminated, useless in this close-quarters hell now. At point-blank range, the T-34 tanks open fire with everything they have. Inside the Soviet tanks, crews know they are outgunned and likely going to die today. But they also know one thing clearly: if we get close enough, we can kill them. Tanks ram into each other like ancient warriors in hand-to-hand combat now. Turrets are blown off, spinning through the air like deadly metal frisbees falling down. Machines burst into flames, cooking their crews alive inside the steel ovens they become. Men try to escape burning tanks, only to be cut down by machine gun fire. Some tanks are so close they cannot even rotate their turrets to fire properly. the battlefield becomes a nightmare of twisted metal, screaming engines, and massive spreading fires. Smoke is so thick you cannot see 10 meters in any direction around you. Bodies lie everywhere, German and Soviet, burned beyond recognition or torn apart by explosions. This single engagement, Prokhorovka, becomes the symbol of the entire Battle of Kursk forever. The largest tank battle ever fought in human history happens right here today. But here is the truth: most people do not know about Prokhorovka at all. Prokhorovka was actually a Soviet disaster in terms of tanks lost in the fighting. The Germans destroyed far more Soviet tanks than they lost in the battle today. Hundreds of T-34 tanks were turned into burning coffins for their crews. But, and this is the critical part, the Germans could not afford these losses. They were supposed to break through, to encircle, to win the war decisively here. Instead, they are stuck, bleeding, dying, and making no progress toward their goals. And the Soviets, they have reserves, lots and lots of reserves waiting behind them. The turning point: by mid-July, the German offensive is collapsing completely across the entire front line. Hitler, desperate for results, orders his commanders to keep attacking without stopping at all. But reality is setting in among the German generals, who see the situation clearly. The Soviets are not just defending anymore, they are preparing to counterattack with force. On July 12th, the same day as Prokhorovka, the Soviets launch a massive offensive. They attack against the northern German flank with fresh armies brought from reserve positions. Then, on August 3rd, they attack in the south with overwhelming force and firepower. The Germans, exhausted and out of reserves, begin to retreat for the first time, and they never stop retreating from this point forward until the war ends. From Kursk to Berlin, the Soviet army will push westward, smashing through every defense. They will reclaim every mile of territory, every city, every village they lost before, until they plant their red flag on the Reichstag itself in Berlin finally. Now think about this: Kursk did not just stop a German offensive or win a single battle. It broke the back of the Wehrmacht forever, completely and without any possibility of recovery. After Kursk, Germany would never again launch a major offensive on the Eastern Front. Every battle from this point forward would be defensive, desperate, and ultimately doomed to fail. The initiative, the momentum of the war, had shifted permanently to the Soviet side. The question was no longer if Germany would lose, but when and how badly, the human cost. But let us not romanticize this battle or make it seem glorious at all. Let us talk about the real cost, the human cost, the price paid in blood. The Battle of Kursk lasted 50 days of continuous, brutal, and bloody fighting daily. Over 800,000 Soviet soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured in the fighting. The Germans lost around 200,000 men, killed or wounded or missing forever. Thousands of tanks were destroyed, turned into scrap metal and graves for their crews. Entire divisions were wiped out, ceasing to exist as fighting units in a single day. Villages were erased from the map, nothing left but burned foundations and corpses everywhere. Farmers would find unexploded bombs and shells in their fields for decades after the war. In the village of Prokhorovka, there is a memorial standing today on that battlefield. It stands on a field where, in 1943, the earth was soaked so deeply with oil and blood that nothing would grow for many years. Imagine this: you walk through that field now, in the present day, many decades later, peacefully. It is quiet now, peaceful, beautiful even, with flowers blooming in the spring sunshine. But beneath your feet lie the rusted remains of hundreds of tanks. Still there, still buried in the soil, still holding the bones of the men who died. And if you listen closely, just for a moment, standing perfectly still and quiet, you can almost hear the echoes of that terrible day coming back to you. The roar of engines, the crack of gunfire, the explosions, and the terrible screams. The strategic impact: Kursk changed the course of the war in ways that are difficult to overstate clearly. Before Kursk, the Germans still believed they could win the war in the east. After Kursk, everyone knew the truth, even if they would not say it aloud. Germany was losing, and there was nothing that could stop the Soviet advance westward. The Red Army had proven it could not only defend but also attack effectively. It had absorbed the best Germany could throw at it and survived the onslaught. More than that, it had learned how to fight the Germans on equal terms. Soviet tactics improved, Soviet equipment improved, Soviet confidence grew with each victory won. The German army, on the other hand, was being bled white across multiple fronts. They were fighting in Italy, defending France, and now retreating in the east constantly. There were not enough men, not enough tanks, not enough fuel, not enough hope. Hitler's gamble at Kursk had failed spectacularly, and there would be no second chance. The initiative had passed to the Allies, and they would never give it back. From this point forward, every German strategy would be reactive, defensive, and ultimately futile. The technology battle. One of the fascinating aspects of Kursk was the technology on display that day. The Germans brought their newest and most advanced weapons to the battlefield confidently. The Tiger tank was feared across every front where it appeared in combat zones. Its armor was thick enough to withstand almost any Allied tank gun at the time. Its gun was powerful enough to destroy any Allied tank from extreme ranges safely. The Panther was designed specifically to counter the Soviet T-34 tank. It had slopped armor like the T-34 but with superior German engineering. The Ferdinand tank destroyer had armor so thick it seemed almost invulnerable to attack. But technology alone does not win wars, as the Germans learned the hard way. The Soviets had numbers, they had determination, they had courage, and they had tactics. For every Tiger the Germans fielded, the Soviets had 10 T-34s ready. Yes, the T-34 was inferior in armor and gunpowder to Tigers, but it was reliable, easy to produce, and available in massive quantities, always ready. Soviet crews learned to exploit the weaknesses of German tanks through experience and sacrifice. They learned to get close, where their guns could penetrate German armor effectively. They learned to work together, overwhelming single German tanks with multiple Soviet tanks. They learned that sometimes quantity has a quality all its own in warfare. The air battle, while tanks dominated the ground, the skies above Kursk were also filled with death. Both sides threw thousands of aircraft into the battle for air superiority over the battlefield. German Stukas dive-bombed Soviet positions, their sirens screaming as they fell from sky. Soviet Sturmovix attacked German tanks with cannons and rockets in low-level attack runs. Fighters dueled in the sky, leaving trails of smoke as they fell burning. The Luftwaffe was still a formidable force, but it was outnumbered increasingly each day. Soviet pilots, many of them women, flew mission after mission without rest or relief. They knew that control of the skies meant life or death for troops below. German pilots were exhausted, flying multiple missions per day with little sleep. Between them, aircraft losses on both sides were staggering, hundreds shot down in a single day. The sky was filled with parachutes, some from men who survived, others who didn't. Anti-aircraft fire filled the air with exploding shells and deadly shrapnel flying through clouds. It was three-dimensional warfare on a scale never seen before in human history. The commanders. Behind every battle are the men who plan it, who order it, who bear responsibility. On the German side, the commanders knew this was likely their last chance to win. Field Marshal von Manstein was a brilliant tactician, but even he had doubts now. He knew the odds, he knew the Soviet strength, he knew what failure meant. But orders were orders, and Hitler demanded victory at any cost, no matter what. On the Soviet side, Georgy Zhukov was the mastermind behind the defensive strategy employed. He had studied the Germans, understood their methods, and prepared the perfect countermove carefully. His strategy was simple: let them attack, absorb their strength, then counterattack with everything. It required patience, discipline, and a willingness to accept heavy casualties initially without panicking. But Zhukov understood that this was how you defeat a superior tactical enemy decisively. You do not fight them where they are strong, you fight them everywhere else. You make them pay for every meter, and then you crush them completely. Under Zhukov were other brilliant commanders like Rokossovsky and Vachetin leading their armies. These men had learned their craft in the brutal school of war itself. They had survived Stalin's purges, the disasters of 1941, and grown stronger. Now they were ready to show the world what the Red Army could do. The aftermath, when the battle finally ended, the landscape was transformed into something unrecognizable and horrible. The fields were cratered like the surface of the moon from thousands of explosions. Destroyed tanks littered the ground as far as the eye could see in all directions. Bodies lay everywhere, often impossible to identify or even count accurately at all. The smell was unbearable, a mixture of death, burning, and chemical explosions lingering everywhere. Civilians who had hidden in cellars emerged to find their homes destroyed or gone. Many had lost everything, their families, their possessions, their entire lives erased in weeks. For the soldiers who survived, many were wounded, physically or mentally scarred forever. They had seen things no human being should ever have to see or experience. They had done things they would never speak about to anyone afterward. The Red Army began its advance westward, pushing the Germans back toward their homeland. Every town, every city, every river crossing would be contested, but the outcome was certain. The German army was broken, not destroyed yet, but broken in spirit and strength. They would fight on for nearly 2 more years, but they would only retreat, the legacy. Today, Kursk is remembered as the turning point of the Eastern Front by historians. It is studied in military academies around the world as a masterpiece of defensive warfare. The Soviet strategy of defense in depth became a model for future military planning. The German failure at Kursk proved that technology alone cannot overcome determined resistance, numbers, and strategy. It showed that wars are won by logistics, by morale, by will, not just weapons. The battle also demonstrated the importance of intelligence in modern warfare clearly and decisively. The Soviets knew what was coming because their spies had penetrated German high command. This allowed them to prepare, to position forces, to create the perfect trap effectively. Without that intelligence, the battle might have gone very differently for them all. Kursk also marked the emergence of the Soviet Union as a true military superpower. No longer could anyone dismiss the Red Army as inferior or poorly led anymore. They had defeated the best Germany had to offer on the battlefield decisively, the lesson. So why does Kursk matter to us today, so many decades after the battle? Because it teaches us something fundamental about human nature, about war, about power and ambition. Hitler gambled everything on one battle, believing in myths of superiority and invincibility completely. He believed in superior technology, superior soldiers, superior will, superior race, and superior destiny. But wars are not won by myths or propaganda or beliefs alone, never. They are won by preparation, by sacrifice, by logistics, and by cold, hard mathematics. The Soviets understood this fundamental truth better than the Germans did at that time. They dug in, they endured unbearable hardship, they bled, they died by the thousands. And when the moment came, they struck back with everything they had left. Kursk was the moment the unstoppable force met the immovable object head-on. And the object won, not through superiority, but through determination and sacrifice willingly given. Today, most people have never heard of Kursk or know where it is located. It does not have the fame of D-Day or the tragedy of Hiroshima. It does not appear in Hollywood movies or popular culture very much at all. But make no mistake about the significance of what happened on those fields in summer. What happened there in the summer of 1943 changed the entire world. It was the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany and everything it represented. It was the largest tank battle in history, a record that still stands today. And it was the moment when steel, fire, and human will collided violently together, and history itself held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next that day. The survivors. Let us talk about the men who survived Kursk and returned to their lives. For Soviet soldiers, survival meant continuing the war all the way to Berlin itself. Most of them would fight for nearly 2 more years before seeing peace finally. Many would die in the battles ahead, so close to the end yet still far. Those who survived carried the memories of Kursk with them for the rest of their lives. They remembered friends who died, comrades who burned, brothers who never came home. German soldiers who survived faced a different kind of hell in the years ahead. They retreated westward, fighting desperate battles, knowing defeat was inevitable and certain now. Many would be captured by the Soviets and spend years in labor camps afterward. Those who made it home found a country destroyed, divided, and occupied by enemies. For both sides, Kursk was a defining moment, something that marked them forever deeply. It was the day they looked into the face of death itself and somehow lived. The numbers, let us talk about the numbers, because numbers tell a story all their own. Over 2 million men participated in the Battle of Kursk on both sides combined. Approximately 6,000 tanks and self-propelled guns were deployed to the battlefield initially. Over 4,000 aircraft flew missions over the battlefield. During the 50-day campaign, Soviet casualties exceeded 800,000 men killed, wounded, or captured in the fighting. German casualties were around 200,000, but they could not replace these losses easily. The Soviet Union lost approximately 6,000 tanks during the battle according to estimates. The Germans lost between 1,500 and 2,000 tanks and assault guns total. But here is the key difference that decided the outcome of the battle ultimately. The Soviets could replace their losses within months from factories in the Urals. The Germans could not replace theirs. Their production was already stretched impossibly thin everywhere. This was a war of attrition, and Germany was losing that war. Every single day, the final push. After Kursk, the Soviet advance westward became unstoppable, relentless, and terrifying for Germans. City after city fell to the Red Army as it pushed forward day after day. The Germans fought desperately, but they were always retreating, always losing ground steadily westward. By 1944, the Soviets had liberated all of their territory from German occupation. Then they crossed into Poland, Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria, and finally Germany itself in 1945. Every step of the way was paid for in blood, millions more would die. But the outcome was never in doubt after Kursk. The momentum had shifted permanently. The Red Army that entered Berlin in 1945 was battle-hardened, experienced, and unstoppable. It was an army that had been forged in the fires of Stalingrad and Kursk. It was an army that had learned how to fight, how to win, and how to survive. Conclusion: war is not glorious, it is not heroic, it is not noble or honorable ever. It is hell on earth, a hell where young men die in burning metal coffins, where entire generations are erased, where the earth itself is scarred beyond recognition for decades, where mothers lose sons, wives lose husbands, children lose fathers, and nations lose millions. But sometimes in that hell, something is decided that changes the course of history forever. At Kursk, it was decided that tyranny would not win this war after all, that aggression would not go unanswered, that evil would not triumph over good ultimately, that even in the face of overwhelming terror, people would stand and fight back, and that perhaps is the only lesson worth remembering from that terrible summer battle. The tanks are gone now, rusted away or hauled to museums for display. Today, the soldiers are gone, nearly all dead now, the last veterans passing away recently. The smoke has cleared, the fires have gone out, the earth has healed itself. But the memory remains, preserved in monuments, in books, in stories passed down carefully. And as long as we remember Kursk, those men did not die for nothing. They died so that we might live free, so that tyranny might be defeated, so that future generations would know that courage, sacrifice, and determination can change the world. Final thoughts: stand for a moment on those fields at Kursk today if you ever can. Close your eyes and imagine what happened there 80 years ago in that summer. Feel the ground beneath your feet, the same ground soaked with blood and oil. Listen to the wind and imagine you hear the echoes of that terrible battle. And remember that history is not made by nations or leaders or governments alone. It is made by ordinary people, by 19-year-old tank drivers and farmers, by soldiers who faced impossible odds and fought anyway because they had to, by men who knew they might die but advanced anyway toward the enemy. That is the true story of Kursk, the story of human courage under fire, the story of the moment when everything hung in the balance perfectly still, and brave men and women tipped the scales toward freedom and away from darkness. That is why we remember. That is why we tell these stories again and again, so that we never forget. What was sacrificed for the world we live in today. End.